Welcome to the Three Principles Global Community Webinar. I'm your host today, Tom Maddox, and the Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that is committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Citibanks to people throughout the world. And today we are so delighted to have Wyn Morgan. And Wyn Morgan is a sought after coach and consultant for businesses and private individuals from every continent of the world. His ability to quickly identify true needs and create innovative, transformational changes that last has led him to a track record of delivering astounding return on investments from his work in corporations. His work strips away invisible blockages between people and their brilliance in all aspects of their professional and personal lives. He also mentors coaches and leaders and enables them to bring out the best in their own colleagues and clients. And just on a personal note, I've known Wyn for a couple of years, and he's one of the most delightful, wise, and generous people you will ever meet. So with that having been said, Wyn, you are on.
Hey, thanks, Tom. That was nice. I really need to pay the person who wrote that because I was listening back to thinking, that's a pretty good job. That sounds really nice. Who is this guy? Um, it's really nice to be here. Thanks for your message as well, Robert. I've just seen that pop up. Good to see you here. Ahoy, for my friends in Czech Republic and in Slovakia that have cropped up as well. So the title of this is Everyday Miracles Everywhere, which might sound like, I don't know, a very lofty thing to make a talk about. Yet it's true. And when I had the invitation to come and talk again with you all with the 3PGC, I had about three different topics in mind that I would speak about as the general direction. And one of Tom's partners in creativity, Stephanie, I gave her the choice. I might have messaged you as well, Tom, which one of these three? And they chose the one that excited me most as well, because it's at the very edge of what I see, at the very edge of what I can know, but very true for me. That more and more as time goes by, as I get quieter in here, with a quieter mind, I see more things as being miracles, as opposed to what happened a lot when I was young and trying to really figure everything out. I was spending a lot of time in my analytical mind, in my intellect, and enjoying it a lot less. Enjoying life a lot less. I mean, it would still look like a pretty cool life from the outside. I was sharing with Tom before we started some of my adventures from about 20 odd years ago with work. My life always looked really cool, but I didn't feel it on the inside. And for any one of you who've heard my story, you might have heard that a number of times. Um, so bouts of depression, proper kind of breakdown in my mid-30s, and then stumbled across the principles as discovered by Sydney Banks at the end of 2010, really. But then a deeper dive, a proper dive from 2012 onwards. So what's that, coming up to 12 years ago now? And the headline is, as soon as I started to see the nature of thought, how thought works, not what a thought does to me, but how thought works in all human beings, in you, me, and everyone, and 8 billion of us all right now on the face of planet Earth, whether we're awake or asleep, whether we're watching TV, doing the dishes, doing the chores, conducting an operation, being operated on. We all have thought working through us in a similar way in its nature. And when I started to see that, I spent a lot less time with my eyes looking back at me, analyzing myself, analyzing what I thought, to seeing that everything is brought to life by this mysterious miracle called thought. And I'm going to dive into a very thick, you could say it's a paragraph from The Missing Link by Sydney Banks, but really the paragraphs are one sentence long. And it says here, as Sid says, thought is the missing link that gives us the power to recognize the illusory separation between the spiritual world and the world of form. The power to recognize the illusory separation between the spiritual world and the world of form. And full disclosure, when I first got a copy of The Missing Link, I didn't get it at all. I thought it was nonsense. So I put it down for a few years, and then I probably picked it up 3 years later, and all of a sudden I thought, what's this? This is brilliant. Now, it was the same book. No one had rearranged the type inside to make it into a good book from what it was seemingly nonsense a few years earlier. But none of it made sense because I was very much in my intellect and very much into the form of thought as opposed to what brings thought to be. And it feels to me one way of describing it would be if you can imagine layers of tissue paper between my eyes and everything out there in the world. Every little insight I had about the impersonal and spiritual nature of thought, of mind, of consciousness was one little piece of tissue paper moving away, and the veil got thinner and thinner, where now I'm very happy sitting doing next to nothing and really enjoying everything. And if anyone has been reading my blogs for the last few years, I've talked a lot about sitting in the garden, either with my morning coffee or my evening glass of bourbon, and enjoying being quiet and noticing that birds will come along to the bird feeder I put out about a year and a half ago, and I don't know what the birds will be, what the next one will be. I don't know when the next breeze will come through the trees. I don't know when I go out and I put out the little deck chair in the garden, whether it will rain in the next 10 minutes or not. And there's something magical about not knowing, which is a lot to say from a guy who tried to always want to know everything before it happened. So a quick story, and it was seeing Robert Roth's message just now that reminded me of something that happened last October. So I was invited to do some work with a wonderful organization in Czech Republic and in Slovakia. And the first day I was there was a public talk in the center of Prague. And because I was the speaker and I was staying in the same place as the organizer, we went nice and early, which is how I prefer it. So I get there nice and early. I can look around the room and envision all the seats and everything. And I was in this room with about 120 empty chairs. And I loved capturing in my mind that moment of 120 empty chairs in an empty room, not knowing who would be sitting in there, not knowing what I would say, not knowing what they would hear, not knowing what insights that they would have. And to see that the only thing that exists in the not knowing is infinite potential. Infinite potential. And it struck me, and I tingled in the same way that I tingle a lot now in really enjoying not knowing and enjoying those pieces of tissue paper that have disappeared an awful lot more over the years by keeping to look at the books by Sydney Banks and everyone who learned directly from him, and this amazing community, and all the videos and the audios, and to drop a little deeper into what seems to be a truer self, as opposed to the self that I thought existed, that was really good at making me anxious, miserable, with a heap of low self-esteem. And that feels like a different person now. And what I will be doing quite soon is opening this up for questions, comments, because I would love this to be interactive. For those who've seen the film, one of the most famous films of all time, The Wizard of Oz. If you haven't seen it, by the way, it's now 83 years old. So I might spoil the ending for you in a minute, right? So if you've not seen it and you do not want to spoil the ending, maybe put something in your ears for the next few minutes. But there's this quest by the main character to go and find the Wizard of Oz in order to be sent home. And when they eventually get to find this mythical person called the Wizard of Oz and look behind the curtains, it's just a normal man pulling levers and making something very normal seem very big. Well, to me, the deeper I see how things are made, how I'm made, how you're made, how well we're made, how everything is made, everything in matter and everything in energy, and everything I can experience, the fact of consciousness, the fact that I'm aware of being alive, the fact that I'm aware of being made of matter and energy in this little, I don't know, blink of an eye dance of being alive. It is this person that I was named Wyn Morgan by my mother and father, and my mother is here right now on this talk. The deeper I see, the bigger the miracle. As opposed to, often when you see the magic trick and that Wizard of Oz, you see that it's just a trick and it's disappointing. Oh, it's that simple. Oh, I got fooled. To me, when I look at the nature of mind, not brain, the nature of matter, the nature of energy, the nature of consciousness, the nature of thought, it seems a bigger deal. It seems like a more of a miraculous experience than the other way around in the end of The Wizard of Oz. And there was something else I looked up earlier on because I knew I'd seen this quote somewhere from years ago, so I looked it up earlier. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. Now, I've seen that quote a number of times. It's attributed to Albert Einstein. Not really, though. Okay, it's one of those non-Einstein quotes. But still, the ethos of it says a lot to me. But I'm pretty sure that when I was younger, and I didn't understand what I think I see a little bit of now, the little glimpse I've had into being a human being, it seems to me that that's what enabled me to see more things like a miracle, not by trying to will myself to see the miracle, not by making it a conscious choice, but a natural byproduct of seeing the principles in action in me and everyone else. And everything else has led me, I think, to seeing everything as a miracle everywhere. The fact that I can tap this table with my elbow, the fact that it makes a sound, the fact that there's a solid object there that isn't solid at all. We don't even know what matter is. We always think we do, and they get to smaller and smaller particles when they got to the atom. And the atom was named because they thought that was the smallest thing that could exist, and then they realized there were smaller parts in the atom. And then they thought, all right, there's the nucleus, and then there's that's the smallest thing, and then they realize, oh no, there's other things. There's photons. There's newtons, and now they've gone smaller into muons and all these other things that I can't remember because they weren't around in school when I went to school. But we don't know what anything is really made of, and it feels solid, and it makes a sound that I can experience and you can experience. I find that astonishing. And you might think, well, whoopee-doo, nice for you, Wyn. It is nice. And what's been the key for me to see that has been for me to see the illusion of all the nonsense I made up about myself. And how, as a result of that, my eyes look far more outward than analyzing this entity and my brain. So I wanted to start there and then throw it open to you, because it's lovely to see you all here today. So, Tom, how do you want to run this?
Well, we'll run it in the usual way, which is we'll ask people to raise their digital hand. And if you don't know where that is, you can go down to reactions and raise hands, and then we'll unmute you and we'll just go from there. So it looks like we have Ashley. And if you can unmute.
I know Ashley quite well.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something about Ashley right now. Ashley, this better be a really good question.
It wasn't a question, it was just an observation. So, boom, boom. So as you know, I'm in Ireland at the moment. I'm actually sitting in a caravan park right now near Tralee. And it was just an observation of the miracle thing that I stopped today as I was cycling along on my touring holiday and got off at the most beautiful beach that I'd ever seen in my life, literally. And for the first time this holiday, I actually got around and put my trunks on and got in the sea. And as I got in the sea, I just burst into tears. Just burst into tears. You know, I'm a bit prone to that from time to time, but just seeing the miracle in it, and the thing that it was an observation that I saw it so brilliantly today because of that. But that I agree with you. The whole thing's a miracle the whole time. It's just a shame not to see it more often. And that was it, mate. That was just purely it. I might have a good question later, but that was literally it. Me standing in the sea, not exactly howling, but certainly in a bit of a weird old place, in this magical place. But it doesn't have to be that, doesn't it? I don't have to be in the sea in Ireland, you know, having got off my bike, for there to be a miracle. Just that, mate.
Cool. Thanks for that, Ashley. I'm really glad you're having a great time. I've just put the gallery back on, so nice to see so many faces I hadn't seen until just now. So lovely to see you.
And then we have Robert.
Hi, Wyn.
Hi,
How are
Robert.
you? Hi, everyone.
Oh, hi, good to see you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share from the coaching I had today. So my client, my friend, who's very analytical, similar to me, and he is very insecure. And we were talking about making decisions and how the analytical mind plays a part in that, and how something called intuition sometimes can also play part. And it seems like we're not getting really anywhere. But out of the blue, suddenly he mentioned, you know, making decisions from this analytical part, it's quite boring. You know, you analyze everything and it's quite boring. But when you go with the intuition, it's this aliveness, this juiciness of life. And how to say it. I don't remember specifically what he said, but I said, wow. So at that point, I was being coached by my client. And yeah, it was really nice to see the wisdom coming through and really pointing to the truth. And I said, yeah, it's quite true. And I went back to the present moment and really just enjoying and being. I'm now walking by a river, and yeah, thinking about it, it's quite true. And I've also been quite fascinating recently by, for example, by as you mentioned, like knocking on this piece of wood. So I was thinking about my sensory perceptions and how is that genius that when I smell something which I don't like, it's probably because it's rotten or because it's not good for me to eat it or to smell that air. And yeah, it's so fascinating. I just wanted to share that.
It's awesome. There's a couple of things there, Robert, and I mean, isn't it nice to know that whatever we're pointing at with our clients, that it's not something new that is just like groundbreaking. It's something that we can all relate to. This person said, yeah. When something sometimes comes out of the blue, it's far more interesting and juicy, I think was the word you said. It's very cool. Yeah, and the wisdom of something that doesn't smell good to us might mean it's not good for us. Very cool. Thanks, Robert. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Wyn, I have a question for you. Especially since you do a lot of work in groups and talk about what what you share to a lot of people. I'm wondering if we could take maybe a fresh look at how you speak of thought, because in other traditions, psychological, spiritual traditions, I think the idea of a universal intelligence or God or whatever people would call it is relatable. That's kind of common to the world. And even consciousness, I think, is to me at least, seems very easy to see what that is. Like you're just aware. And with thought, it just seems like sometimes it's good to just take a fresh look at that. That's one of the real unique things about this world of the three principles, the role of thought and what it is and how it, determines how we see our lives. Do you just have any fresh thoughts about the principle of thought?
I'm glad you said fresh, because here's what I notice. The last time I gave a talk with the 3PGC like this 3 years ago, at that point, I had some major insights as I thought about thought. And I noticed a few months ago that I'd been stuck in that. I'd fossilized what I then saw into this is the truth about thought. So I'm going to take a fresh look right now. So the first thing that comes to mind is that it's not a thought, not one thought. It is thought as a principle of thought. So the fact that we think, the fact that we think lots of different things during a 5-minute time period, let alone a day, and the fact that what we think is the cause of what we feel, as opposed to anything out there. So an example could be that in my mind, I can feel as if I'm sitting in the garden right now, but I can't even see the garden because I pulled the curtains here. The garden's off in that direction. I pulled the curtains because the sun is too bright, so it makes the light seem a bit weird and I look all washed out on the screen. But I can feel as if I'm in the garden. Or I can, will be another example. I was making a recording for someone who's here right now, and I was talking in the recording about being aware of a big toe, the big toe on my right foot. And it's always been there since I've been born. But right now, as soon as I made that thought of my right big toe, I'm aware of it. It's consciousness, but it only comes via thought. And the other thing is that what I love is to know that I have no say at all in what I'm going to think next. I have no say in that, no control over what the point that Robert was just making about what the next thought out of the blue will be. I have no say in that. nor can I chase a thought away. I'm not in control of that either. So thought has a life of its own. It has a life of its own, and it brings everything else to life. And the other part of it is that, going back to that infinite part that I talked about earlier on, of being in the unknown, on that Monday in Prague with that just potential of those chairs in the room. Well, that's everything, because I never know what thought will be next. It could be a miraculous thought, or it could be a thought that I've had 30,000 times since January the 1st. I don't know. But there's that infinite potential of it. And it just looks to me like it comes out of nowhere, from formless, and then the formless potential of whatever thought I will have next into this temporary form that I will have within this entity called Wyn Morgan. And without thought, I think it would just be a life of numb. It wouldn't even be close to the juiciness that Robert's client was talking about earlier on with him. There wouldn't be any point in this existence. I would be as satient as the aluminium or aluminum, depending on where you are in the world, that's in this can of sparkling water. I think this is more of an existence than the metal in this. But the other thing to say is that I do know what it's like, Tom, to fight what I think, and then to think more about what I think, as opposed to notice the fact that I think, and how amazing that is. And at one level, even the fact that I can be worried about tomorrow is a miracle. The fact that I can have a wonderful memory of yesterday is a miracle, because neither of those two things are happening. All of that is what is called an imagination in a human being. I mean, that's phenomenal that we get to imagine all the time. And sometimes we're so in this very vivid imagination that we have, we don't even know we're imagining. It looks like it's real. It's that pervasive. I find that just extraordinary. So, Tom, that's what came to mind. I don't know what your thoughts are on what I shared.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And isn't it, it's nice to, like, when we're invited to look at something fresh, because we can get kind of fossilized, as you say, and there's just something in it about, when I look at the world, when I look at life, and to see that whatever I'm experiencing, it's just a little bit of that, whatever I'm experiencing. Yes, the world's out there apparently, but what I'm experiencing, how I feel about it, what it means, you can start to see, wow, that's something in me is creating that. And that's what we call thought. Is that something that's creating the experience in the moment? And I love what you said about, I had a really nice feeling when you talked about the lack of control, the fact that you don't know what's going to happen. And it's almost like it's giving, as you said, it is life, and it's giving life. It's giving life to everything we experience. So that's just a beautiful way to talk about it. So thank you.
Yeah. One way I heard this would be the universe would be pointless if there wasn't this matter and energy called human beings that was able to look at the universe and see it and experience it. What would be the point? The astrophysicist, Professor Brian Cox, who is very well known here in the UK, and I've heard him being talked about in the US as well. Well, he annoyed me for quite a while, that guy, when he was on TV. And then I started to listen better. And then I was just like, wow, this guy's deep. And I started to appreciate what he was talking about. And he said something like, we Life is what gives the universe meaning. And here we are in our very sophisticated version of a life form, able to witness ourselves, witness each other, witness the material world, wonder about everything that we can't witness that is hidden and spiritual, and anything else that we think and that we experience and not experience. I mean, that's what gives everything that we are and everything that's outside of us meaning. I remember back in the spring, for the very first time, seeing the rings of Saturn through a telescope, through my own eyes. And they've always fascinated me since I can remember, when I was a kid and looking up at the stars and then reading books about the planets and just noticing how amazing and gorgeous Saturn's rings are. And there I was as a 52-year-old man, not far off Long Island, by the way, trying to see who was mentioning Long Island earlier on, and looking through this telescope and seeing with my own eyes the rings of Saturn and going, wow. Wow. And I was blubbing at this point, right? My eyes were kind of like welling up. I was very moved by that. Short little end to that little story about Professor Brian Cox. I did bump into him in person at Heathrow Airport a few months ago. And he was very amenable. We got a quick little selfie and I sent it to one of my mentees because my mentee knew about my previous annoyance at this gentleman. And of all the people I'd bump into would be this guy, and to have a very quick kind of 2-minute exchange in the photograph. And I sent it to him and he goes, of all the people. It's just a really nice coincidence. And another part of it would be how I got over myself to then listen to what someone else was saying beyond my own kind of nonsense that I make up about things. So thanks for evoking that memory and that story, Tom.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And we have Ashley.
Ashley's back. He promised a question. Let's see.
Well, so if we're not in control of thought, it comes as it wants and it goes as it wants. And if I'm of a mind that life is just miracle after miracle, little ones, big ones, however you want to see it, how do I see them more often?
Can I be cheeky back with you, as I know you, Ashley?
Yeah, of course you can.
That question didn't make any sense at the end, given what you started with. How do I see the miracle of everything everywhere more often? I don't know, Ashley, but there's something in that question that the first part and the second part didn't quite add up. Maybe that's me.
I've got a better version of it right now. I think I'm just saying, what am I saying? I suppose actually more simply, but it would be, how do we be less caught up in our thought to see the miracle?
Well, you're in the right place. Being in this conversation to me is what's helped me see it more often. And we're all on a learning curve with that. Not that there's anything wrong in never seeing anything, because it's still a miracle whether we think it is or not. But I think it's nice to appreciate it. Really nice to appreciate, the fact that we're alive. And I think at the end of the scope for this talk, there was a quote from something that I said about that I wasn't always so appreciative of having been born. Now I think I'm thrilled to have been born into this form, in this life, in this time. I think I've won the Euro Millions jackpot to have been born. The one short answer to your question is the feeling tells us. And it's like hot and cold game, and the feeling of being in my own thinking is it's stale, less appealing, less attractive. And noticing that, to me, makes a massive difference. I was talking with someone earlier today who learned directly from Sid Banks. We had a catch up for the first time in about 5 months. We were talking about, well, he raised it, in fact, that it's a raising a level of consciousness. And once we've seen something, we can't really unsee it. Not really. We'll get caught up and we'll forget. And then we'll notice again and we'll remember. And we get more of a taste of the potential, more of a taste of the wonderful of the unknown, more of the taste of giving up the notion that control is a good idea, more of a taste for the wonder as opposed to the analysis. And that to me is wisdom in action, then, that I will keep going in the way that I prefer. Now, I don't know if that's true for everyone. I don't know what's going to be true for if I will keep thinking that in the next hour. But that's my best answer right now, Ashley, and you're in the right place. That I do know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy. Hey.
Hey, Wyn.
Hi. Haven't seen you in ages.
Been so long. And because it's been so long, this is just a little continuation from how long ago it was that we spoke. But when I just had this feeling, it just keeps deepening. Like, part of the miracle for me right now is something I didn't expect at all, which is being grateful and okay in the suffering. That is blowing my mind, because it's sort of freeing. It's not sort of, it's actually been freeing. And there's been some things that have occurred since I talked to you last with some close people in my life. And it's like that capacity, the miracle of the capacity of love, and how sometimes that brings on such a heavy, tight feeling of suffering or sadness or ache. I'm seeing the miracle in that too. God, if I had known that earlier in my life. I'm really leaning in to that in a way I didn't see possible. So that feels like a miracle, because it does feel I don't think exciting is the right word. That's not it. It feels sort of ripe with possibility. That being in this place is perfectly okay. That feels very much like a miracle.
I know if you and I would have had a conversation about the potential of being grateful for a feeling that we didn't like, then that would have been an interesting conversation 12 months ago. And then to listen to you now and to listen to you last week when you shared so much. And your relationship to emotions is so different than it was. That's just an amazing thing to notice. And that shift has come from understanding how feelings work, how thought works.
Yeah.
that this is a consciousness game of seeing a little bit more and understanding a little bit more, and then what that can do in a life. Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for sharing that. You got a lovely comment from Peter. I don't know if you saw it, but it's in the chat. So thanks for mentioning that, Peter. You can go in and find that. Who's next? By the way, you don't have to be profound. It can be, a question about anything or a comment about anything. Hi, Flavia.
Hi, everyone. So I'm in Scotland on holiday at the moment, and I'm in a little cottage in the middle of nowhere. And this just ties Tom's question and Wendy's experience together, because I woke in the middle of the night, terrified, really scared. It's very unlike me. I live on my own with my kids down south, and I'm fine about being on my own. I was scared. And I had to go check. I'd closed the latch on the door. And then I thought, well, I've done everything I can do. And then I fell back into the knowing that it's my thinking, right? It's my thinking. That's all it is. And that if there is a danger out there, I'll deal with it if I have to. But that to me was just another example of how this understanding just grounds you. And how I love how you say, I don't know what thought's going to come next. And that was a thought that came out of nowhere, and it's not a habitual thought. And if I hadn't known this understanding, I think I would have been freaked out for the next 5 hours, So I just wanted to share that because it's just so settling to just know about thought and how it works. So that's all.
Very cool. Yeah. Just a little bit of separation between being in that freak out and that scared to just, scared.
Yeah.
And, to me, one thing that just occurred as well in listening to you was the difference between real danger and fear. Because they're not the same. They're really not the same. And in real danger, I don't think we've got time to be afraid. I don't know if that's empirically true, but it just makes sense to me. That if it's real danger, we're going to be in the action of dealing with whatever we've got happening right now. Fear is very different. And especially at night, because, there's no distractions and it's dark, which is why the cinemas are really great experiences compared to watching a movie on our phones in bright light. Very different, even if it could be the same film, same movie. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Hi, Paula.
Hi, Wyn. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Good to see you too.
Yeah, thank you. As I've been listening to you and everyone, something came to me about how wisdom works and how our minds work that I wanted to share. I am at a next level point in my business, and I don't have, formal business training as an entrepreneur. So far I've just been kind of winging it, and it's kind of worked. And I've reached the point where I need to go beyond winging it. And so anyway, and what had been coming up for me in my personal mind was a lot of, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know. I mean, that was over and over again. And just, just in the last week, I became aware of another little voice in my head, which said, well, what about these ideas that have been percolating in your mind? Maybe do you want to explore one of those? And I realized there has been my wisdom the whole time, coming up with some, a couple, 2 helpful ideas to explore. And I just been going, I don't know. So I decided that I would listen to the voice of wisdom, and I've taken some action on something that sounds reasonable to me, and we'll see where it goes. But I just thought it's so funny how, for me at least, the habit of personal thinking is so habitual. And all I need to do is just really listen for that other voice of wisdom that is there too.
Well, that's awesome. That's beautiful. But there's so much in that. So one way of saying that, and well, this talk, everyday miracles everywhere, right? That's one.
Yes. Yes.
Always available. Yeah, very cool. But the whole notion of being, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, and that can feel problematic, as opposed to, oh, I don't know what to do. Then anything is possible from that place, including that, going for the idea that you had. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to notice.
Very true.
Thanks for sharing that. That was really cool.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
Isn't it great to know how well we're made that can just bubble up and become this?
Yes, it's always available.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, this is fun. Who's next?
Looks like we have Susie. Hello, Susie.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi there.
Susie. Hey.
Hi. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm just going to speaker. Well, yeah, I just had to say something because it ties in a bit with what Paula just mentioned, just something I just saw afresh in the last 24 hours. Just something I've been stressing about. Well, as you know, my daughter's been off school for a couple of years, and I think we're getting her back to some degree this September, which is great. But the school's just deciding on whether she can stay in the current year or has to go down. You know, as a mum, that's like, you know, all of that. Haven't got the answer yet, and you know, how will I manage it? She won't discuss it, and blah blah blah. You know, angst. And then I listened to one of Cindy Bang's podcast last night, actually, on 3BC website called Wisdom. And you know, it just hit me afresh. It just hit me afresh that whatever happens in that moment, I will then be guided how to deal with it. You know, I will be guided how best to support my daughter or what action to take or anything like that. And I won't know until it happens. I just won't know. I mean, I just won't. I won't know absolutely. And in the moment, it will then become clear, or sooner or later it'll become clear if I just relax. And I just forgotten, you know, I just forgotten that we're never alone. Ever. Just like never, ever alone. And that really feels like a miracle to me right now. You know, that feels quite emotional. It's just, I mean, that's just amazing. You know?
That's lovely, Susie. I'm really happy that you saw that. But also to know, right, that it wasn't just the insight that was wise. It was wisdom that made you put on that recording.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I've never listened to any through this website. That's how I found you as well, that you were speaking actually yesterday. And yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? We just have to relax and be open to what comes.
And with that well made, that it's a real-time responsiveness. And when I first heard those words together, real-time responsiveness, that's what wisdom is. That's what being guided. It's real-time. When it's required, that's when wisdom will occur in the moment. We don't, okay, let me get wise today on Thursday, August the 22nd, to know what to do on September the 7th. It's like, doesn't work like that.
I know.
It would be like, okay, I'm going to put my umbrella out now because on September the 7th it's going to rain. Really? It would be that kind of crazy. And, it's really nice to know that real time, that's where the guidance system works.
Yeah. That's all about, it's all about control though, isn't it? I mean, not seeing that, if you see what I mean. It's just like human nature to try and control and be prepared and what I will do and what I will say, but it's not how it works. Yeah.
And until we see how well we're made, and seeing the deeper, for you to keep on looking into, is it true that this is a real-time responsiveness, this wisdom that is there, as opposed to a pre-planned, preordained, let me, get wise now so I can figure the rest of my life out. When we see the truth of how well, no, because going back to what Robert Roth's client would say, that would be boring. I mean, there's a Greek myth about that, right? To know the future is actually a curse. So we've known about this for 3,000 years. Very cool to notice. And then control would make less and less sense. Get less and less of a taste for it.
Yeah.
There was a show here in the UK, a TV show about supermarkets in the 1970s on TV last week. And it was showing all of this, food in a can, there was boil in the bag fish and all this kind of stuff. And I remember really enjoying all that food, and some of it I still do. But there's nothing better than a fresh piece of broccoli as opposed to canned broccoli. Fresh piece of fish compared to fish in the boil the bag kind of thing that's been there. And do you remember Vesta meals, Susie? Vesta, they were like freeze-dried paella and freeze-dried curries and stuff. Well, I remember I quite enjoyed them even at university.
No.
As good as the real thing, as fresh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And once we've tasted the fresh, we get less of an appetite for the stale and the freeze-dried.
Yeah. And actually, each time you see the same thing again, you kind of see it slightly differently, don't you? Or slightly more deeply, or becomes just that little bit more embodied.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Rick.
Hey, Wyn.
Hi, Rick. Good to see you.
Yes. I just wanted to also just I've been really going deep diving into your podcasts again and hearing them for the first time again. So spot on. As Susie was talking and Paula were talking, I had this image. I had been I just finished a backpacking trip with a couple of granddaughters in the backcountry, and I overpack habitually. I'm loading this thing up, and it's like 40 pounds, right? And it's like only a 3-day trip, right? And I'm thinking my relationship with thought, it's like, really, we have our essentials. Like, I know I'm going to need, a tent and a sleeping bag and a pad, and, but everything past that is me making stuff up about what I might need going forward. It's just so fascinating how I get trapped into that, where, I come from a background of, we must be prepared, right? In emergency services, there's a lot of pre-planning going on all the time. But in reality, we're at the seat of our pants in the moment. And we talk about being in a flow state. Flow to me has always been, being guided to the next step but it's taking along with you everything that your skill set and everything else, that whatever's needed in that moment is available to you. And really, I think of all the emergency in danger and all that other kind of stuff. I've dropped my backpack of what I've ever thought I needed more often than not, and relied on whatever was going to happen in the moment, like responding in that moment. And then at the end, when it's all over and we're sort of having the tailgate, debriefing, it's sort of like, how the heck did we ever go through that? Like, how did we ever thought that? How did that ever happen? It's like many miracles happening constantly. Even on a grander scale, I went to like a plane crash. It was a small one, but still major kind of a thing. But the world stopped around us. Like I used to work in a very busy center, and there was always this sort of the complaint there was never an ambulance available to people. But when something happened, like so many things that are happening in the world, it seems like every other incident just stops for the moment. And everything just sort of almost like it is a miracle. People stop calling in the ambulance, and all of a sudden cars are available. Personnel are available. People are available. It really is remarkable when you kind of step back and sort of see what's happening. It's just, yeah. There's something out there for sure. Okay. Anyways.
Lovely, Rick. Really cool. I think I saw some photographs that you posted of your trip on social media. I can't remember exactly where I saw them, whether it was Instagram or Facebook, and it did look amazing where you went. And then isn't it good to know what you just said about flying by the seat of our pants? And that is not our pants. That's the skin. That's the seat of our pants. It's the seat of our butt. And that's a part of us. That's how well made we are. Not that everything's going to work out right in the way that we want them to, because there's an ending to this physical existence, as far as I'm aware anyway. And yet, to be able to witness being alive for the time that we are here, and then to know that in this time that we are that well made, that we have a seat to our pants that is that reliable, is just nice to notice.
Absolutely.
Nice being the understatement of the day so far.
Well,
thanks, Rick. Thanks for sharing that, Gordon.
Well, even the point of saying an innocent phrase of, it's just your thinking. Like just, the word just, it's like, no. Right? Yeah. It's like, it's not just, it is that, right? Anyways.
Yeah.
Well,
you just reminded me of something there, Rick, and it was something I was going to bring up earlier on, I think, in response to one of Tom's questions about thought. And it was, thought can look like it's just thought. Well, yeah, in that context of that's what's creating a feeling and emotion, yes. And what thought is, well, the energy behind everything is one way of describing thought. Consciousness, the energy behind everything. Mind, the energy behind everything. It's that big a deal. It's the formless that is before everything in form and then goes back to the formless again. Yeah, it's not just anything. It's huge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Wyn, we're at the top of the hour. I was wondering, anything you want to say in closing?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you to you, Tom, for being here and making sure it all worked out well, and for everything that you do as well, because I don't know how well everyone knows that. And I listened to the recording of you doing this talk from a few weeks ago, as I said to you when we met last week. And to everyone else for being here. It's been wonderful. Now, there is one other sentence I did think of earlier on, again from Sydney Banks and the Missing Link. And it's when you start to see the power of thought and its relationship to your way of observing life, you will better understand yourself and the world in which you live. When you start to see the power of thought and its relationship to your way of observing life, you will better understand yourself and the world in which you live, which to me is one way of saying what so many of you have said today. To go back to what Rick said, what Susie said, what Flavia was saying, every one of you is in that vein. Ashley's comments and questions, and Robert too, has been, I think Paula was the one that really made me think I need to read that one out as well. And Peter, thanks for your comments. It's really nice to see you. Thanks for that. So that's all I wanted to say, was thank you to everyone for being here. And I hope our paths cross again very soon. Nice to see so many familiar faces, people that I see regularly and some people I see less regularly, and some I haven't seen for a very long time and some for the first time. It's been a delight. Thank you.
Yeah, and before we say goodbye, I just want to say that coming up, we have Maria Iliff Wood, who will be giving the next webinar on Tuesday, September 5th, which is at our usual time, 2 p.m. Eastern, and you can work out your time zone, hopefully, on your own, as we started this whole conversation with when Wyn first came on. But thanks everyone for being here. And if you want to unmute yourself and say goodbye to Wyn, feel free.
Thank you, Wyn.
Thank you, Wyn.
Thank you, Wyn.
Thank
Thank you, Tom.
Good night.
Thank you, Tom.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Thanks so much, Wyn. We'll see you soon.